Thank you, Duncan. So can you hear me well?
Yes. Yes. We're
Great. So hello, everybody. I'm David Bizols. I'm working at Sequoia as yesterday. So I know that we are just after lunch, and let's say starting the afternoon is not easy. So I will try, let's say, to be interesting, to keep the interest high. During this session, I will explain, let's say, what is OXA to define the goal of this sub-project, and also to illustrate how we bootstrapped, let's say, this approach in a product. So I will start, let's say, with basic images, but I think this will be interesting to understand how it can be related with the project. If you want to build a house, you will require to comply with architecture rules. This makes sense. This is very obvious. And what you will have to do is also, let's say, to define in your house what will be the key elements, the key rooms that you will want to have to create, to build. These basic communities that correspond to the use of, let's say, your family or who will live in this house. And then once you have done that, you will also focus on how to optimize the way of circulating between the rooms in this house, to make sure the flow is easy, and to make sure, let's say, bedroom is not hidden behind the garage, because otherwise it's just stupid. So you need to focus about that. And maybe at the end, you will also make sure, let's say, to have a correct sizing of, let's say, the place, to make sure that it will be aligned with everyone's needs. So these are very basic principles, but architecture, a feature list, the flow, the sizing, all these aspects are important for a house. And the OXA project, OXA, intends to do exactly the same thing for an XDR house. And when I say XDR, you might prefer, let's say, a security analytics environment that is made for detection and response. This is exactly the role of this project. So what does it mean exactly? We arrived to this picture, which is quite well interesting to represent this project. It means 4 different blocks that are all necessary, let's say, as main XDR pillars. So the first one is that we have to deal with threat intel. We are talking about, let's say, threat intel and how to distribute, let's say, what the backend knows to the connected sensors. That means a company might have an internal threat intel, and it's very useful if all the connected sensors can get access to this threat intel that can be specialized for their profile. The second point is about, let's say, the ingestion capability. We talk here about, let's say, logs, events from different data sources. And the goal, let's say, is to try to get an agnostic language, try to unify the format in order to gain time, both for vendors and for the backend side. The third point is about automation. So we talk here about, let's say, interacting with the sensors, the technologies that are plugged to the backend in order to provide them, to give them orders and to automate part of the response. And finally, the fourth pillar is about orchestration, and the goal here is to really to organize the response strategies using playbook, and maybe to do it collectively. So I think you get the idea, but most of these concepts are already known by you guys in OASIS or OCA topics or other open projects. If I, let's say, summarize or try to illustrate, let's say, this wheel, this figure with other main OASIS concepts, we get the glue with sticks and taxi, we get the glue with Cacao, we get the glue with OpenC2, and also with another open project, which is OCSF, or we can speak about ECS, Elastic Command Schema, or even OHDF. open MDAL data format. All this kind of this project makes sense to be discussed into the OXA scope. So as I said yesterday, the working group of OXA has not started yet, but I can already illustrate, let's say, what OXA looks like when you apply it or part of it, let's say, into a product. So this will be what I will do now by talking of our solution, our product. So of course, I will have a bias here because I will talk about Sequoia.io, our product, but really you must, let's say, imagine that some points I will illustrate, let's say, could be also operated by another product dealing with XDR. So on our side, we are a SOC platform powered a lot by threat intelligence, and I will detail how we leverage OXA in the project. So on my first part of the demonstration will be the first pillar, the threat intel pillar. The goal of this approach is about CTI dissemination, and it's important, let's say, to try, let's say, to make sure that what the companies know or the backend knows can be available, let's say, for security sensors. So as I said, let's say we have our own CTI capability internally. And on our side, let's say it is structured as sticks to that one. So now I will have a look on the solution. So you should still be able to see my screen. Here we are on the dashboard of the platform. And if, let's say, I select, we'll zoom a bit more. If I access, let's say, to the library, the threat intel library, I can search for any kind of intelligence we have. So if I want, let's say, to align with what has been seen before, I can search for Volt Typhoon, and then I will get access to Volt Typhoon intrusion set. So with detail about this intrusion set. So you might this figure might remind you something you have seen from JJ this morning. We have all the relationships that can be associated with Volt Typhoon, so with different campaigns, infrastructure, victims, or IOC that can be related to that. We get all the reports that are known to be related with Volt Typhoon. So for instance, if I select, let's say, the latest one, this is one that has been produced by CISA. So here I will get, let's say, the CISA report, let's say, which is a PDF file, of course, but we have translated it into sticks subjects. So everything can be seen here with the different kind of SDOs, tool, attack pattern, campaign, etc., that have been, let's say, defined in this report. And if you want, let's say, to see it as a graph, of course, as it is sticks data, you can visualize it as a graph. But what is interesting here is about, okay, you get access to this threat intel, but what's interesting is about CTI dissemination. And what you can do is to use feeds, let's say, to define specific filters in the way to consume your CTI. So for instance, here we have defined a feed, a network IOC feed. And if I look at the configuration of this feed, let's say I can see that this network IOC feed has been configured, let's say, to select only indicator objects. And on this indicator object, I just selected some, let's say, specific observable or SEO that makes sense, let's say, for network capabilities. That means autonomous systems, domain names, IP address, eventually MAC address, etc., because if this is a network sensor that will consume this CTI, it does not make sense to provide the sensor information such as hash file. It does not make sense. And what is interesting is that this feed should be consumed then by a sensor. So for that, let's say today we have different possibilities to do that. Let's say we can use playbooks such as this one. And in this case, let's say the feed we have just seen before will be exported directly, let's say, to a CrowdStrike manager And in this specific use case, it was not, let's say, the network feed we have seen before, but it's the EDR feed that has been selected, but it could be another one. It does not matter. The point is that the way we do it correctly, we do it today, as you can see, is that we push the information of the feed to the CrowdStrike manager. It works, that's very interesting, but the goal of OXA would be to revert the process and to make sure that every sensor could collect directly the specific feed that is associated to their profile. I mean, I am a firewall, I will consume the network feed. I am an EDR, I will consume the EDR feed. Well, you get the idea. So we continue on the next point. Now we talk about ingestion, and if you remember, the goal is to use this, let's say, a standard way that could be used, let's say, to understand agnostically, let's say, incoming logs, incoming events, and that could be recognized, let's say, as a generic format. This is very useful because by doing that, it would avoid the time, let's say, for a product, an editor, let's say, to develop is specific language, let's say, to speak and to generate events, and it will also optimize the integration time on the backend side. And instead of having to develop multiple integration with every technology partners, you just have to speak one agnostic language. So this can be done, let's say, with some existing open projects such as OCSF, or we can also talk about ECS. So I will detail that. So in an XDR, when you have to deal, let's say, with information coming from multiple sources, of course, you will eat a lot of stuff coming from different tools. Or here's the last in real time view, you get information from CrowdStrike, from another EDR, from Windows logs that are connected to this demonstration environment. And the point is that each event will be structured in the way we have our own internal model. So for our side, it's an ECS structure, but the goal is to be able, let's say, to ingest information from different connected technologies. So for that, we have these intake blocks, and you can, of course, let's say, understand information from multiple technologies in the world. So this can be, I don't know, bind sensor as your front door, directly Linux machines, checkpoint, whatever it is. But what's interesting is generic format. So if I look at OCSF, I will see that I have one specific, let's say, format that is available. And this is very useful because by using this kind of, let's say, connected sensor, I can make sure that any technology that can speak with OCSF will be understood directly without having to create a specific integration. So what is it, let's say, when you go into detail into this specific, let's say, connector? This is just a parser that will, let's say, translate what we know or every field of OCSF into an ECS, into ECS format. So we have done that in the project. We have also create a public mapper in a public repository on GitHub. This will be transferred into the OXA repository. And I'm pretty sure this kind of a converter will be very useful for the community later. So let's continue. So in order to orchestrate mitigation strategy, we need to think about playbooks. So in our solution, it looks like something similar to Kakao, but it is a proprietary format. So we have not, let's say, work right now, let's say, to review completely the model to work with Kakao. So let's take an example on that. If I switch on the playbook side and I will select, let's say, one playbook that I found very easy to understand, Slack notification playbook. So for this specific playbook, we get access, let's say, to a visual graph of this playbook, and you will see that when you get an alert, you will understand, let's say, some elements of the alert. You will have some conditional elements, and at the end, let's say you send, an information to a specific Slack channel. So if it works, okay. This was the last notification we received, let's say, on this specific demonstration Slack channel. So it works. It's very, let's say, useful when you want, let's say, to automate part of the job, let's say, in your strategy, and you want to orchestrate the way you want to define some actions. Of course, what would be interesting, let's say, for a global XDR approach would not be, let's say, to use our proprietary language, but to use a Kakao capability, because Kakao is open and everyone can create and share these Kakao playbooks. So what is great is that we will need internally, let's say, to have a way to import Kakao files, and Vasileios proposed to develop an importer for that. So thank you, Guy. That's great, and we are eager, let's say, to have this ready for better XDR capabilities. I continue on the next one. Okay. So now let's speak about automation. So in a playbook, as we have seen, let's say you will have different action blocks. Of course, you can add as many of them as you want. And what would be interesting, of course, for automation blocks is to think about OpenC2. OpenC2 is made for that. It has a perfect sense, let's say, for this automated capabilities. And if we look at the way we do that correct in the product, if we want, let's say, to add an action block in our playbook, we could just let's say go here and to select let's say I don't know something about let's say CrowdStrike, and of course maybe to block an IOC that could then be configured let's say to be part of the playbook. Of course, it does not make sense in our illustration with a Slack notification, but you get the idea. You have the possibility to activate, let's say, specific action blocks, let's say, related to specific technologies. And what we have in mind, let's say, is to move, let's say, from, once again, our proprietary language, let's say, to define these automated capabilities to OpenC2 using actuator profiles that are for us a real game changer. Today, we have already opened our repository of automated automation library. So for instance, if I look at this one, I am in the automation library of Azure. So the way we can interact with Azure, and we have developed, let's say, some let's say mapping capabilities, defining, okay, if I want to do that, let's say by asking an Azure Active Directory, I mean Entra ID, let's say I should request this API endpoint, etc., etc. So maybe this can also be a warning, just to give you a couple-minute warning. And so in Oxa, we try to merge, let's say, these different use cases all together because we really think that this is necessary to deliver a real agnostic XDR capability. Let's say the OCA repository is already available. So the point is that I won't say that we are very active today on it, but this is why I really want, let's say, to officially launch the project today, and to use this CASP event, let's say, as a milestone for this project to ask everyone who could be interested, let's say, to participate, to get the first feedback, and in order to start the first working calls. So thank you, everyone. If you have any feedback, ideas, or whatever, feel free to contact me. I will be very happy to answer.
Thank you very much, David. Round of applause. Thank you. And next up is Max.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yep. Hi, my name is Max Lesser, and I'm the chair of the Project Governance Board for the Defense Against Disinformation Common Data Model. So, yeah, I'm here today to talk about the red-headed stepchild of information security, which is defending against influence operations, information manipulation, and other forms of deceptive online activity. And to give you a sense of how strange and niche this space is, I actually was an English major who then worked in commercial marketing, and now as an analyst in this space where I spend oftentimes hours during my investigations doom scrolling on social media. So yeah, very niche space. Anyways, so what does DAD CDM seek to do? Wow, when I turn my head, I realize that the audio becomes strange, so I'm just going to hold this near my face. What does DAD CDM seek to do? So DAD CDM seeks to address a problem that goes by many names, right? There's really a lot of different ways to slice the pie, and people like to call the problem different things due to political sensitivities, but the most capacious term, and the term that has the broadest applicability, but the least degree of specificity, is information manipulation. People oftentimes call this, it can be an influence operation, depending on the context. The problem also can be described as cyber-enabled influence operations. And again, these are all different shades and refer to slightly different things. Foreign information manipulation and interference, FIMI, that's an acronym of choice in Europe. Disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation, MDM, that was used for a while, and that is like, those are particular tactics that are part of the broader problem, right? So it's not exclusively focused on disinformation, which, you know, we might want to change the title of the project. That's a consideration for the future. Social engineering, which we'll get into that, and the relevance of this framework for social engineering, even in the context of cyber attacks that don't have an influence component outside of social engineering, and then information disorder. So these are all different ways to slice the pie, or different shades of gray in a very gray world. So what will DAD CDM not seek to do? So I'm going to preempt the obvious questions. DAD CDM will not seek to determine what is and is not true. DAD CDM does not seek to restrict free speech. And it also does not serve any specific political or ideological agenda. I mean, this is not prescriptive, right? This is a way to enhance threat intelligence and share threat intelligence, and people can do whatever they want to do with it, be it whoever the actor is that's seeking to respond to these types of incidents, be it a platform, be it a civil society organization, be it a news group or reporter. So I just want to, you know, address the elephant in the room to start with. Okay, so I realize I'm talking to a room full of highly technical cyber experts, so I thought it would be best for me to just talk about why this is relevant to all of you. So aside from just general concerns, obviously, about the problem, which many of you might have, but so I want to start by saying this: cyber operations and influence operations are two sides of the same coin. That coin is information, right? They both deal, at the end of the day, with information. Now, cyber operations, and this is how I'm choosing to slice the pie right now, right? People might disagree with my definitions. Cyber operations seek to shape machine behavior, right? Fundamentally, you're trying to affect the operation of some sort of machine, and you might try to affect human behavior to get into that machine and change that machine's behavior, but that's a cyber operations. Again, very broad definition there. Influence operations seek to shape human beliefs and behavior, right? And there's a lot of great parallels that have been drawn by different people talking about the relationships between the two. And I'm not going to get into all the details here, though I'm happy to discuss that more at length. If anybody wants to come find me after, be in touch with me. But then what is the convergence of these two arenas? You have cyber-enabled influence operations. And this is a term that people are using increasingly. And it's where some sort of cyber operation is used in support of a greater influence operation. So a classic example of this would be like a hack and leak operation, right? Which we've seen in many places around the world. To use one that's completely divorced from our political context, you can look at like the Yemen Cyber Army in 2015, which they was a hack and leak operation, I believe, against governments in the Middle East. I'm not going to name any specifics, but this was completely divorced from our political context, right? So you have cyber-enabled influence operations. And then this is a term which is not used as much, and I myself am still trying to determine how much descriptive power it has, but I think it's helpful just for understanding the two sides of the same coin here. You also have influence-enabled cyber operations. And what is that? I mean, yes, on the most literal level, it can be an influence operation that's trying to motivate people to conduct offensive cyber operations. We actually see that quite often, right? I just saw another example of that today. But it also can mean, and this is why I like this term, cyber operations that include sophisticated forms of social engineering, which might conventionally be more associated with an influence operation. Or sophisticated might not be the right word, but elaborate, right? So, for example, if a bunch of botnets on social media are spreading content as part of an influence operation, that same technique, right, which we in the field of IO call coordinated inauthentic behavior, that same technique can also be used to spread malicious links, right? And there's been plenty of documented examples of that. Or another example could be, and I know my entire life I've been somebody who intentionally does likes to go against trends, but I'm going to say the trendy thing, like synthetic media, right? Obviously, that's another one where you're seeing that used in hard cyber attacks, right? Or cyber operations, like if people here have heard of presentation attacks, where people are using deep fakes to trick facial recognition through like face swapping, or you can also presentation attacks, which are a little bit more in depth, which I'm not going to get into detail. So, point being, there's two sides of this coin, and I will move on. So, extending sticks. So, fundamentally, what DAD-CDM seeks to do, we are not reinventing the wheel. We are extending sticks so that we can model information manipulation. So how are we extending sticks? We're adding new objects, right? And so many of you here are going to be familiar with many of the objects in this slide, but you might not recognize objects such as narrative, or objects such as information attack or community, which I believe is, yes, in the bottom right-hand side of this slide. So we're going to be adding lots of new objects that are relevant for influence operations, and some of these objects might also be relevant for what all of you guys do with modeling cyber operations, which is what I anticipate, especially if we have objects that are relevant for things like synthetic media and forms of social engineering that involve elaborate activity on social media. And we're also potentially going to add new relationships, right? And this project is in its nascent stages, right? So this is all hypothetical, but it is quite likely, that we're going to add new relationships such as amplifies, right? Which, to my understanding, do not currently exist for sticks in the cyber domain. Next, so people have already extended sticks to model influence operations or information manipulation or whatever you want to call it. This is an example by filigrane. So you can see here that you see in the bottom, in the purple box, in the upper left-hand corner of the purple box, you see event, right? And this is a real world event, right? So let's say an IO is responding to a crisis, which is something that we often see for these types of threats, right? Like wildfires in Maui, and different malicious actors are trying to leverage that to stir chaos. We also see new forms of cyber observables, for example, for media content, right? So like a sticks observable for a hashtag rather than a hash, a sticks observable for a meme. Things like this are what we're going to model. And we're also seeing some of the different relationships. If you look at the lines with the arrows, for example, amplifies. Anyways, So I'm going to go ahead and continue. There might have been a couple things that I missed here, but people are already doing this. There's already an appetite for extending sticks to refer to information manipulation and influence operations. And what DAT-CDM seeks to do, right, is to do this in a way that's open and that, is standardized to a certain degree so different people can draw from it. So now I want to actually show you, this isn't DAT-CDM per se, because again, DAT-CDM on a technical level does not exist yet, but I want to show you how somebody has modeled a threat in this space by extending sticks. So I just want to start by just giving you a quick snapshot of what the threat looks like to an end user. So if you see on the left here, these are two domains, which I'm going to try and keep this as apolitical as possible, so I'm not even going to name the threat actor, though you can probably infer it. So these are two domains. These are just two of like a vast network of domains that were used as part of an influence operation. This influence operation was exposed by VG which is a French agency, sort of on the vanguard, like a novel type of agency that responds to these types of incidents. So these domains were created, and as you can see, just like the layout and design obviously is nearly identical. You have Pravda France and Pravda English. But modeling that and improving that can be more difficult. So anyways, we're going to get to that. And then you have these are two vContacta pages, or I've never used vContacta, so I don't know what you would call this, but and then they have different relevant movies. So anyways, this is a coordinated campaign, and this is how analysts in this space currently exchange threat information, right? So PDF reports. This is actually a very in-depth PDF report. This is again by VG but PDF reports sometimes that list indicators. Like I released a report a few weeks ago, and it was all entirely on Facebook, and it's you just screenshots, just screenshots, and it's like obviously there's limits to the degree to which you can communicate a threat just with a PDF. So anyways, or the fidelity with which you can model and communicate a threat just using a PDF. So I'm going to continue. So this it's quite messy, so bear with me. But this is a very tiny snapshot, and if I have time, I can actually open up and show you guys the extended six knowledge graph for this. Oh, I have 7 minutes. Okay, we're going to have plenty of time then. Well, I'll just open it up for the Q&A then, because I think people might have a lot of questions, which is fine. So I will definitely show this to you, but just to start with the static image, because so here you see this cluster here. I'm moving around it with my mouse. Sorry, do you see this? Actually, I might just move up and show it to you. So this cluster here, these are a bunch of Twitter accounts. Okay, has anyone seen a sticks object with Twitter accounts before? Maybe. No. Okay. And these are 3 domains. Pravda EN, Pravda DE, Pravda PL. I think this is for Poland, Germany, and English-speaking audiences. These are all connected to an IP address. They also are engaging in a similar TTP. So these TTPs are drawn from the Disarm framework, which is like a deeply related project, which is essentially the MITRE attack framework, but for forms of information manipulation. And then the relationship here is amplifies, right? So pretty much, right, like what's the big picture here? So sharing information in this space is just as important for countering information manipulation as it is for cybersecurity. I don't need to preach to all of you guys. I would be preaching to the choir if I talk about why structured information sharing is important. But structured information sharing is important in this domain because, okay, maybe a lot of people here have seen in the news, you know, different reports about whatever, you know, threat actor creates a bunch of fake social media pages, and, you know, this can even be useful for that. But a lot of the more sophisticated campaigns, they have more complex infrastructures, and also unearthing that infrastructure and modeling that infrastructure that underlies the campaign helps make attribution more credible, or any sort of characterization of the campaign more credible. So, and it also helps different analysts. So actually, I'm going to go to the next slide because I talk about the use cases, or I'll just talk about the use cases. I don't have that on the next slide. But so what are like the different use cases, right? So there are companies, 5 minutes, there are companies. Is that including Q&A or not? Yeah.
Next talk starts at now 4.
Okay, so I'm just going to move through. So there's a whole emerging industry of people who look at these types of threats and combat these types of threats. And depending on the country or the region, there are also government organizations that do this. So there is a huge appetite for this. And there is even, you know, there's ISACs and things like this that are popping up to deal with these threats. And so this is really important. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and open up the time for questions. Okay, so quickly, DAD CDM, who's on our team? We have people from AdTech Cares. We have some of these companies that are focused on countering information manipulation. We have the Disarm Foundation. We have where I work, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, which is a nonprofit think tank, right? So you have sort of running the gamut. But anyways, with that, I will open it up for Q&A, because I'm sure there might be some questions, maybe not. Yeah.
Well, I'll start with a question. Recently, last weekend, there was a fairly major publicized cyber attack, XZ, where basically took over the trust of one of the open source repositories and used it for malicious behavior. So I see that as one of the overlaps between ours. Would you consider the sort of the multi-year abuse of the trust system to become the maintainer of the system? Would you consider that a type of influence operation?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it could be construed as one, certainly. So it's like, yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, how would you model that with 6? I'm not as sure, but like, you know, definitely, for sure.
I expect that to be a very hot topic in the near future. Questions from the audience? Yes.
Thanks. So, David on WWC Global, supporting DIA. Does your system support sentiment analysis on the IO side?
I mean, sorry, this is so awkward. So I don't know. Maybe we would have. I mean, there are softwares. I don't know how extending 6 to include objects that represent sentiment analysis. Maybe that's a possibility. I'm not sure. But no, not currently. But there are softwares out there that do sentiment analysis, right? Like social listening softwares and things like that. And maybe that could be something that we integrate into the data model. But really, you know, it's pretty wide open right now. We're considering a lot of different things. So that could be.
Mike Phillips from SLG Innovation. I just wanted to share, I enjoyed the irony in your example. Pravda in Russian means truth.
Yeah. Dot. Anything else?
Jason Kirstead, Cyber. Quick question. Actually, kind of a two-part question. So when we think about sticks and everything we're doing in the past 2 days, like the keyword's always automation, right? So one of the questions I've had with Dad, and I'd love your thoughts on it, is like, so when someone consumes this, what's the machine speed action that would get taken as a result of DADs? Like, oh, I'm going to block this on my proxy. Like what does the end user do with that machine speed? Is a question I have. And then the other second question is, so I can't help but notice that like none of the social media behemoths who are spouting this stuff out were on that list. So how do we get them engaged?
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a great question. So the first one, and Stephen Campbell, by the way, who he's a remarkable resource, and he's heavily involved in shaping this project on the technical side, and he helped me create this presentation. Stephen Campbell with the Disarm Foundation, he has shared with me a really interesting way to think about it, where it's like in cybersecurity, oftentimes the domain you're seeking to defend, and here comes Stephen, is like proprietary, right? But in the realm of defending against information manipulation, oftentimes it's the public sphere that you're seeking to defend, right? So what does a response mechanism look like? That depends, right? Very much if it's a social media platform seeking to do its own content moderation, or if it's a civil society organization, it depends. And secondly, about how do we get other people involved? Well, you know, especially in the US, this is a very politically sensitive issue, and nobody wants to seem like they're censoring free speech, which is entirely not what this project is about. But the term disinformation has become a bit of a dog whistle. So, you know, it's something that I think we are thinking about, again, how to frame this issue as apolitically as possible, and in a way that gives people assurances that, like, we're not looking to, you know, be the ministry of truth, so that, you know, more people are able to get involved. Stephen, I don't know if you have anything to add.
We're out of time at this point, so I'm gonna have to cut Stephen off. I'm sorry, Steve. And thank you very much, Matt. Applause. You stop sharing first. Next up. You're up now, right? Did I do it right? Who's up next? Think you're on a break? Oh, we're on break. All right, I didn't mean to hurry so quick. If we're on break, then we are on break for how long? How long? 2:05. 2:05. We'll reconvene at 2:05. Sorry. Welcome back, everybody, and I'll turn it over to Pat.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, your mic's not on.
I would like to just,
Sorry.
Your microphone is not on.
Hit the button. Huh.
okay, how about now?
Just a little better.
Better? Good enough. Good afternoon, everybody.
Well, maybe not.
Want me to hold it? All right. I can speak louder. All right, how's that? All right, take 3. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to start off with a brief comment, recognition of Mr. Jonathan Sparrow, who is the father of this thing that started off small a long time ago. I'd also like to call out specifically Jay Harnett and Jay Ginn, who have been doing a great job coordinating. Hi back there, hi Jamie, if you're on the call. And of course, our host, the Paracon and the Cyber for hosting this as well. Having said that, so let's talk about the Interoperability Village. When we look at what we've been listening to for the last few days, all this technology, all these things plugging in and working together. I don't know about you, I knew about some of the pieces, and I'm very knowledgeable on some, but not the others. Wouldn't it be great? I mean, how I know when I leave one of these things, I have all these ideas and stuff, and I want to go back and I want to download it, GitHub, and do this, and get all these pieces together, but you never have time, right? And geez, and I want to try to get all this stuff plugged in and working together. How am I gonna do that? At AT&T, for me to make a connection to any one of you would take me 3 months of paperwork to get my lab to be able to connect to you. So that's the foundational principle of what I talk about is the Interoperability Village. I stole the Interoperability Village theme from Duncan for this conference, but the concept is this. Well, first off, a little anecdote. I use artificial intelligence, generative AI, to put together all the graphics on this presentation. I reached out to my AT&T, how do I get graphics artists engaged, and how many hundreds of dollars it's going to take, And I said, you know what, let me just give this generative AI, you know, give it a shot. So all the images in this were generated by generative AI in 5 minutes of me describing the storyboard. Okay, it took 5 minutes, but you may notice something out there. The spelling of interoperability. So even though I told generative AI, Interoperability Village in quotes, I spent 2 hours trying to get it to spell interoperability. I'm not exaggerating. Okay, and I could go on, I got a much more anecdotal story about how many hours I spent with this, but these slides, original slides, 5 minutes from me saying, here's my storyboard, give me pictures. We go to the next slide. Okay, so in the evolving, in the world we're in today, we got to get much better at fighting these adversaries. We know this. That's why we've been working on all these standards. It's really hard work doing standards. We pick any one of the 6 Axio. I began on this, I guess, 2010 with Sean Barnum and Richard Struess, and that's like 14 years that we've been slugging this out. OpenC2, Cacao, VEX, CSAP. Let's just go down the list. We're at an inflection point to where all these things are now functional, and we can start latching them together and find out what works, and more importantly, what doesn't work. But how do we do that? How do we take all these pieces and create a central, neutral place for us to build this thing and test? So that is the basis of the project. Next slide, please. So what I'm proposing to this community, because it's got to be central and neutral, is use the Open Cybersecurity Alliance to house the project, to be the organizational structure around it. Okay, and the objective here is to build a persistent cloud infrastructure to where we can put all these pieces. I've got a dozen technologies that we use at AT&T that I can't even demonstrate to you, but I can build them in the cloud. NIST, OpenCTI, Malteo servers. That's all stuff that I've got the skills and the knowledge that I can bring to the village. Okay, and build on, and all of you can bring your pieces as well, and we can get them latched together and end up with a mesh. So that's the aspirational. Doug has another description for my, but I call it aspirational. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what are the benefits? Now, I would like, if you could, hey, generative AI did a pretty good job in this interoperability village, right? Imagine Duncan's slide with all the circle, with all the pieces around it, right? Look at CTI. That's what this village, this, I'm showing you the 2B state, okay? And we're all living together, we're happy, okay, etc. But, what is it going to give? It's going to give us enhanced interoperability testing, the ability to do this. It's also going to allow us to take this community that we built, all of those people who work together, some of us know, we know pockets of each other, but give us the opportunity to all work together. Also, it's going to give, eventually, this is my theory, because obviously going to fund this. I'll get into that in a little bit of strategy. Building it and getting impetus and getting demonstrations of how things work based on the standards, okay, is going to allow us to get more and more vendors participating. And vendors participating at 2 levels. Vendors need to understand, hey, you need to make your products work with this standard. Because we've got all these other pieces. We need you to come to the table and have your products work with these standards. This is going to help us. This is going to help us bring them to the table. This is going to help us hopefully get more and more financial, because we're going to need to fund this thing over time. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the plan. And there's a lot more steps to this, but I'm at the beginning phase here, because there's no, if you guys all say, hey, Pat, I'm in, where do I log in and put my tool up, my framework? Doesn't exist. So we're in the early stages. So this has been proposed to the OCA, PGB, and it looks like if it's approved, and I think it will be, it's going to be a standalone project under the OCA. The next thing is solicit sponsorship for the cloud infrastructure. So what we've done, we're on our second approach with Microsoft. Microsoft has an open source project, front door you can knock on and ask them to donate infrastructure. I've got 2 inroads in AWS, and we've also, through Oasis, we submitted to the Allen Tyler grant program. So we're actually submitted this year for a grant for roughly $120,000 to $140,000 to fund the first year, roughly 60,000 cloud infrastructure roughly 60,000 for a dedicated technologist, cloud engineer, somebody that we can, have dedicated to this. Because up until now, okay, this is step 3, engage volunteer participation. Now, until we actually have it determined whether is it AWS, is it Azure, is it Google Cloud, is it IBM Cloud, is it somebody else's cloud? The person, the organization we can get to donate that to us for the first year is going to determine what the technology is. That's going to determine the skill sets we need. And there's a lot of details into how we're going to build this thing. But one of the main things I'd like to plan here as an idea is all this stuff that we've heard about, SBOM, right? We're going to need to build this thing. We're going to need to do it without any funding per se, and we're going to need to secure it. Okay, so what better place for us to bring all the tools and capabilities that we are building, standards around, tool and framing around, than this building. We'll use our own stuff to protect ourselves and manage and deploy this thing. So it'll be it will be a demonstration, reference implementation, not only for the individual pieces, but for the concept of what we're trying to do with those pieces, if that makes sense. So, the technical resources, well, hopefully I've got you all thinking like, hey, if I had a place where I could take my thing that I built, my cacao roaster or whatever, someplace where it could be there working. I don't need to tell you how to do it or you how to do it. You have to do this piece. This thing's going to be there. It's going to persist. I can just go and build on it. And the other thing is, as it persists, then we can extend it. When we find out what doesn't work, we can adjust it. We can tweak it. If that adjustment breaks something else, we can, so we can tweak this. We don't have to wait every quarter for one of these sessions for us to take this to the next point. We can build incrementally our progress over time. That's really one of the key takeaways here is persist this. Take what we've already accomplished and then build on it. Now it's counting. We get 100 different moving pieces here, different versions, different releases. Okay, yeah, there's going to be a lot of work keeping it working, but yeah, that's what we're all going to have to deal with anyway, right? If we're deploying these things operationally on our own networks. So by doing them in a neutral, central place, we can build on that. Last slide, I think. Next slide. So here's the strategy. Stakeholder engagement, this is part of that. Sponsor outreach, that's ongoing, I've outlined that. Volunteer recruitment, and then there's specific for how we will engage with stakeholders in the PGV in terms of progress and whatever. So there needs to be a lot of organizational structure. There's a lot of technical processes that need to be defined. Change requests, how we open up connections. We're going to be low. We're going to be kind of low cost. ACL, IP address firewalls, that kind of stuff. So it's going to be pretty low tech until we convince F5 to give us some virtual LTMs. We convince Palo Alto to give us some stuff. So there's going to be some process. There's some work organizing the technical aspects of our process and procedures. How you're going to request to get a connection, how we're going to configure that, how we're going to provision that, how we're going to manage that. So there's a lot of work to do once we have the cloud infrastructure. Because until that's there, we really don't have anything to build on. I'm convinced that this is such a good idea. I don't know why Microsoft isn't like saying, hey, that sounds like a great idea. What's that $100,000 a year worth of cloud cost to them or AWS or Google? Okay, so we just have to make. I think we've got a good argument. We've got a good story. And if it weren't for all the work of all of you folks and all the stuff, all the amazing stuff, I don't know about you, but just compared to where we were, Duncan, at the beginning, wow. So I think that's it. Do I have one more slide? I don't think so. One more slide? Yeah, there's one more slide. Matt, one last slide. This is my closure. Here we are, all at the village. We're still talking about this thing we haven't built yet. We're all sitting around the campfire. Okay, kumbaya. We all feel good, right? So let's go do this thing. And with that, I'll close and open for any questions. I know Duncan's he's gonna challenge.
Questions, and I'm gonna start with questions. So I'm obviously in favor of doing this. This will be I'll actually have two questions. I'll save the second one in case someone else has one before me after my first one. The first question is I have talked, so one of the purposes of this is to get the open source projects and the vendors a place to put their stuff. So I had in the earlier session today a lineup of quite a lot of vendors that work in the software supply chain space. And I have spoken with some of them about donating their products into this space. And so far, all the ones I've talked to have said, yeah, but. Okay, let's see from this but question. And the but question is, they want to donate it to the space so that the AT&T and DoD, where their customers can use it, they don't want to donate it in their space so that the other 6 people standing up here in a row can do competitive analysis on all their competitors. How do we deal with that?
So the strategy is to have participation driven by OCA membership. Okay, so that's the strategy. Now, it's not just going to be open. So when we convince, IBM is a big sponsor of Oasis, they're a big sponsor of OCA projects, Kestrel, et cetera. Okay, and we're going to be able to have this thing touch into X-Force. IBM X-Force, for example, will be for our scenarios. So there will be scenarios, there will be test cases. We're not just going to build this uber fantastic be-all cybersecurity solution that anybody can just tap into and leverage. That's not the strategy. The strategy is there will be structured control use cases and scenarios. Now again, to the point, is there needs to be process in front of this, but it is not the intent to create some open thing like that.
But are you picking winners? Are you going to pick one of the 6 up there, or are you going to allow all 6?
I think allow all 6 would be my.
How do you keep them all to be used by everybody else, but not by each other?
You have a thought on that? So I mean, I have some thoughts. I say have all 6 because a stakeholder might have one of those 6 tools and 3 other tools, and that stakeholder's interested in those things working. Because I saw some duplication. I saw some people kind of in the same space, different approaches, etc. Right. So to me, I think that's what makes it work. But
so David Otto, WWC Global, supporting DIA. Again, just an analyst, not a technical expert, but it occurs to me what you're describing sounds an awful lot like D6, for example. Defense, the distributed common ground system. It's a environment very similar to what you're talking about, intended for completely different purposes. It's mostly an all-source tool, but it's an environment that is at least intended to be modular in that it is you put programs into the environment, and depending on the needs of the shop, you have different modules installed or not installed. And if the objective is to have all the programs in the same place, but restrict usage for certain purposes or certain people, if you have that modularity, you can engage in some kind of verification so that if, for example, Manifest wants to work with company A, right? Vendor agnostic. Company A wants to work with company B. They can engage with OCA. Say, hey, we want to work together. This is what we want to do. This is why we're doing it. And then access can be granted without giving it to everyone else. All right, so everything's in the same place. Yes, but there will be, so there are controls.
That's good.
And let me just, again, it depends on who gives us the cloud. I've built this before.
Hopefully all 3 will, but that's okay.
Well, but that's a different challenge too. That's another challenge. That's why.
Well, they just all have open C2 interfaces. So
I've actually built the core of the pieces that I'm interested in. That's what the CPI, Jupyter Labs. I mean, I've built this before as a commercial product and deployed at AWS. I mean, I know how to do this. F5 appliances, but that's just me, right? So the point is that modular, Ansible, containerized, and we're using Docker Swarm to deploy our internal infrastructure. I'm going to take our Docker Swarm templates or Ansible templates to build our scalable, modular, Elasticstack, OpenCTI, MISP. I'm going to take that and use that to deploy to this environment. So the point is, it may not just be one homogeneous thing. It could be anything. It could be anything. Be instantiation brought down. It could persist. We could have taxi servers persisting. We could have them on an as-needed basis.
All right, we have a minute and a half left. Any other questions? I'll ask one, but it'll have to be quick. So you made the point, well, first of all, to make a statement that many people don't realize. So this is, I think, our 7th instantiation of the village or its predecessors. Google actually was a sponsor of all of them. I mean, this is the first year they didn't sponsor us. So they did actually put a fair amount of dollars in cloud infrastructure in the past. But my question, you said, why isn't Microsoft already doing that? So my question is, why isn't AT&T already doing that?
Well, I am advocating for AT&T, but the village itself needs to be agnostic. It needs to be open. It needs to be under OASIS. It can't be me.
No, I know why aren't you building it? Why aren't you building the cloud? But you have clouds too, just like any other clouds and any other clouds.
We're using
whatever. It's just a point out.
It's not
everybody's case.
It's not everybody's. We're using Azure. We are very, very heavily dedicated to Azure. Okay, so.
All right, well, with that, we can give Pat a round of applause.
Thank you, Lord.
Mike. Waiting all day to say that.
All right, strap in. I know you had lunch, and I'll try to keep you awake. But I've got about 10 pounds of information in a 5-pound bag here. So a lot of it is takeaway. So please do download this deck, because I'm not going to touch on everything, but I'm going to try and hit the highlights. So I'm going to be talking about the NEEM Open Cybersecurity domain. And first of all, you know, I feel like a mortal amongst the cybersecurity gods here the last 2 days. And my mission has just been trying to figure it all out. You know, what are all these pieces? How do they fit together? And what can I do, you know, with NEEM Open Cybersecurity to try and help all this get glued together? So I stole this. But the important point of this is any good soup needs a good binding broth or stock, you know, to hold it together. And so that's sort of, I see a role that me and others in this room I know are interested in coming up with the stock, you know, that allow these letters to come together and work together. Thanks. Wait. So the genesis of this NEEM started with the 9/11 attack. And Muhammad Atta learned to fly in Miami. I'm in Florida. And next, there was a warrant for his arrest, and he was up in Pensacola. Click. He was pulled over for a traffic stop. Click. Click. So they let him go because the systems didn't share data. The hundreds of law enforcement agency systems weren't connected. So the warrant for him couldn't be read in Pensacola. They couldn't get at it. So because of that, click, boom, we know what happened. So what they realized was all the information existed in all these systems to have avoided this. And there was no predictive analysis, no one looking at all this information and trying to pull it together. And thus, NEAM came about, and I was the project manager for the state of Florida to do the first NEAM implementation to connect all of those law enforcement agencies for a shared intelligence network. Next. So the issues, you face, in law and justice, warrants, be on the lookout, all these things that they all do and want to share, click. And then you have all these organizations you got to bring together to play nice to allow that to happen. But we're not much more different. So we're not much different in cybersecurity. We've got all of our things, alerts, incidents, you name it. And we have all these players. We've got to get to play nice to be able to share this information. All these wonderful efforts are happening here, but we got to all come together here and make sure that it's going to work. Now, NEAM tries to create the grand translator in the middle. That we've got standard X and standard Y. That we've got some common terminology in the middle that allows the data to seamlessly pass from one to the other. So in the NEAM community, it started off with a justice domain, which is highly mature and goes through the whole life cycle, the offender life cycle, workflows and exchange points, and then all these other domains popped up where we have agriculture, maritime, there's middle ops, human services, and cyber is the newest one in the mix. So the mission really is to support visibility of cyber risks and solutions through consistent data and information sharing was the mission of this domain. And the way it works is, with any of the NEAM domains, you have state, tribal, local, federal, territorial, international, private come together to collaborate, and all players are equal, and we reach consensus on standard terminology and ways to share. And so, like I said, each of those domains are different levels of maturity of coming together. And the core of this is in the model. The NEAM model has a core that has data elements described that apply to anything: name, address, event. It doesn't matter what the domain is. And then you get into the domain-specific data, like in law enforcement, it could be an arrest. It's an event, but there's specific more elements that apply to that event because it's an arrest. So cyber would have, our events, an event out of the core, but because it's a hack, there's additional information that are just cyber related that would be extended off of that in that domain. This is a takeaway. There's a lot of things that have been developed by NEAM that are already in place. You can read this at your leisure. One of the more recent ones was the pharmaceutical drug monitoring is based on NEAM. I was recently in London, and a couple of people here in the room, I think, were there as well. The Oasis Borderless Cyber Initiative, which was at the Royal Holloway wonderful campus there of the University of London. And it was a wonderful session. Imagine this session with people from all over the world. Now we have international representation here, but it was pretty incredible. And one of the things that I walked away from that was, here's all of the different activities that are happening internationally. The UK has all of their activities, their equivalent of the cybersecurity framework. China has one coming out now. And then all these standards, we're all in the room for the 3 days or whatever we were there, and all great intentions of my little niche, we're going to solve this problem. But nobody was talking across the efforts. There was nothing, there was really no macro view of it. And Now I'm here, and we've got our same thing here of several wonderful players doing wonderful work. And when I stand back from all of it, you know, I've got the international circle, we've got this circle of things happening, and you get kind of cross-eyed and blurry, you know, trying to look at it. But somehow, you know, we've got to figure it out. And so you got to stand back and look at it. Now you can see the two circles. They're there. And wow. We don't want to end up here. You know, and if we're not careful, you know, that's where we're headed. And we can avoid this by talking with each other. Now, one of the recent things that's come out is the cyber defense framework. I don't know if any of you have followed this, but it has the identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and then it added these dimensions of devices, applications, networks, data, users, you know, and these sort of provide the shells of where we can kind of start to put things and understand how they fit. Not the BS, just tell me, are you actually doing something for devices and identify?
Yeah, Sunil used word, he wrote the book on it, he actually usually attends this, he's in Israel right now.
Yeah, and I did talk to him about this and collaborated with him, so I'm showing with his permission. So, you know, plugging vendors into this, you know, it is an ongoing effort, but I'm going to try and plug standards efforts into this. Where does sticks fit in here? You know, where do they all fit? We'll probably find some things we don't even know about. Are we heavy in the front end? We noticed that we were really light on the respond and recover side. You know, so let's fill this in, and we're going to find duplication, I'm sure. You know, so what do we do about duplication? You know, like there's exchange points. You know, do we need 5 different exchange points for the same exchange of data? We already know about this, you know, silos and we know about this, you know, by having a standard to share, we can exponentially reduce the time of sharing. But what we don't want to end up, again, with this contraption, and where we're solving the problem, but it's a really painful way of bubble gum and baling wire to get everything to work together. Yeah, we don't want that picture either. Oh, I like that, but it's... So again, here's our cybersecurity framework. And so what we're trying to do right now is document integrated workflows across the whole thing. You know, what are integrated streams across this? Where are the exchange points, the data exchange points between these processes? This is independent of vendors, independent of what you're already doing now. You need to create a macro reference model of what it looks like, what it is. And then you look and say, well, is there anybody doing this part of it? Is there anybody who's done this exchange? And so it's an independent look at the macro level of a reference model that now we can see how we all fit. And we can also see maybe these two people ought to get together. Or we got a hole here. And that's where we start getting into a meta-knowledge graph of this. And so I wanted to do that. In fact, I was talking to CISA earlier. We'd like to work with them to create that meta level because they're trying to struggle with fitting all this together. 3 minutes? Yeah, we don't want our analysts to have to deal with something like this. Oh, that's cool. And this is stuff we've already talked about. The hackers. Ooh. The hackers are already way ahead of us. You know, so we've got to get caught up. It's not moving. They're trying to create chaos. So we got to make sure we got the right tools at the right time. And we're ultimately going to have AI versus AI, you know, and we eventually, the goal is we'll just be on the beach with our umbrella drink and let our bots, you know, take care of it all. They'll only wake us up, you know, if it's something really important. Here's just the fun stuff. I've pretty much done. But this shows the reasons for need, collaboration, consistency, development, support, which leads to all these wonderful things. You can read that, but that's what's going to pull this together. And we need to cooperate with that. And it's pretty important stuff we're doing because lives are at stake. If somebody's hacking the grid, or hacks a train, we got a problem. So in conclusion, I come in friendship, to work with everybody here. It's not too late to save the planet, basically. I mean, when he came, it was like, hey, you got to come together, work for peace together. And he was going to come back and check and see how the progress was. Well, we need to see where we're at in the next year or two. Have we come together? Have we come together as one unit? And there's a glue, the base stock is there for the soup to taste good. And we don't want this. That's it. So we're the subcommittee. If you want to be on the committee, talk to me. If you want to give us money, talk to me.
So still got 1 minute left for questions. I'll make a statement because you didn't actually cover it. So at least when I left it, which was a little while ago, but not too long ago, Cybermain had started, and actually the basis of it was 6. I mean, the 6 objects are already in. So at least part of the common vocabulary, this group sort of has a say in. How is it reconvened? Like, again, I left partly because nothing was happening. Are they actually meeting and everything now? Is it meeting? We can start timing if we are interested.
My task is to get it going again. It kind of went stagnant, so I've got my oil can out and looking for smart people like you. We already have some volunteers to jump in, but it went dormant. I think it was because of the complexity of it. I think it overwhelmed a lot of people to try and make this happen. It's not a small task. So I'm insane, so I'm going to give it a shot, but I can't do it by myself.
Yeah, so it does have a basis of 6 in it already. It does at least have the acronym SBOM, because I got that added to it. But it is in a very nascent state. So it is basically, I mean, by law, actually, there's actually laws that say the only way the federal government can talk to itself and other government agencies is through need. So it's way more influential than people realize. It's just mostly been in other domains other than our domain historically. So I will stress the importance of it. Well, with that, thank you. Michael, if we give him a round of applause.
Stop sharing, I'll start sharing.
So audio check, people can hear me good. Agenda check to make sure I didn't screw up like I did earlier. I believe this is where we are at on the agenda. Actually, I've seen Jane sitting back in the corner. I see some thumbs up, so that's good. We're going to play a little bit with the agenda as it was originally published. The order of events was actually wrap up and future plans was after what's called the engagement forum. We're going to switch the order of that because the engagement forum is basically some time that was set aside. So basically the people who were still here had it blocked on their calendar. And then it's like, all right, who wants to get together to talk about whatever topic? We talked to the organizing for this. Should we sort of have breakout sessions, let people get together? We thought, well, we'll do the people get together on breaks, but as you notice, we haven't had a whole lot of very long breaks, although people have been taking advantage of it. So again, the engagement forum will start shortly. We get together here in the room. There are other rooms available if you want to break out. There's sort of lounge area outside where we're eating. There's also 2 other rooms on the other side that we can do that. But before we do that, rather than do that and then probably lose everybody or lose most of the people and then come back for the wrap up, we thought we'd do the wrap up first. So first of all, thank you again to our sponsors. To Paraton for this wonderful facility, for the snacks and everything that's been provided, to Cyware for both the lunch that was provided, but also for the little knickknacks and pens and everything else. And thank you for the Open Cybersecurity Alliance for the logistical support, the badges, getting us all in and out, as was mentioned. Thank you to both James, Jane Harnard of Oasis, who's been supporting us with this, Jane Ginn, who's the secretary of the Open Cybersecurity Alliance Cybersecurity Automation Sub-Project, or I just shorten all that to say OCA CASP, and then which is co-chaired by myself and by Brad. So everybody's sort of happy with it. If we do some things right, we do some things wrong. I'll say from my personal experience, I think this is one of the better ones yet. I think we've done a lot well, but we could always do better. So we're going to sort of break it into 2 parts. One is to discuss some of this stuff now. You know, what could we do better? What could be improved? Some of the sort of, hey, do we want to do it again stuff? And then separately, I'll make the plug before we even get into the discussion, is who will really make a lot of these decisions will be the CASP ongoing work. So if you're interested, Open Cybersecurity Alliance does have sponsors, and obviously they love more sponsors that pay them more money. But to participate, you don't have to pay anything. So Oasis sort of has 2 models. One is the technical committees. To be on a technical committee, your organization has to have paid to be a member of the technical committee. You can't handle otherwise. So some of the groups like Open C2, which I have been co-chair, and the new either OSIM or SCIM or whatever we name it, those are technical committees that you will have to pay to play. But on the Oasis Open projects, the sponsors basically pay and then allow everybody to play. So OCA is a open project. You don't have to pay anything to participate. You have to click a button that says, yes, you're not going to violate the intellectual property rules. You'll only donate stuff you're allowed to donate, basically. But that's pretty simple. So 2 links there. One, sort of the easy one to remember, Open Cybersecurity Alliance. Go to their homepage, either look for CASP or just go /CASP at the end of it. And you'll find our page, which is going to be links to our GitHub, a little bit of a description about it. Or the actual, you want to be on the mail list, you want to actually join and get told when the meetings are going to be so you can show up with them, know what the Zoom link is, whatever. It's the more complicated link down below, which you can find off of the open, if you go to the Open Cybersecurity Alliance link, go to the CASP section, go to our GitHub repo and read the README. It'll have that more complicated grammar link in there as well. So not to cut off the discussion now, but just to recognize we want you to continue the discussion in that group. So what did we do well that we don't want to take away and not do again? So do we do anything? Do you have any? Hey, next time don't forget, this one was better because you did X, which you didn't do last time, which wasn't as good or whatever. Any thoughts there? Friday afternoon, no one's in. Yes, Charlie.
I'm biased, but
Wait, let me give you
okay,
like,
I the mic. Also loud.
maybe not loud enough for people in California.
All right, so I'm a little biased, but one thing I think that helped a lot this year compared to previous was my team providing those elastic logs for the other projects to experiment with. Not saying that we always have to be the ones to do it, but I think providing that source of common log data, similar to the village that you're proposing had, that made a really big difference for a lot of teams to be able to build more interactive demos this year.
Make a follow-up comment.
You can, but I'm going to make one first. And that is, I agree fully. Thank you, Charlie, for doing that. And I'll even generalize to say we just got prepared better ahead of time. In fact, we had a half day before on Wednesday afternoon, but more importantly, that we decided 6 months ago to have it now, as opposed to the last one we decided 3 weeks before we had it, just because system that we're announcing, we got spot on rambles, we finally announced it was also short notice, we said, all right, we'll have it anyway, we just too hastily, so I do think the preparation is good. Patrick?
That's a great example of where the interoperability should come in. We could have Caldera, some of you folks are familiar with Myra Caldera, it allows you to simulate an enterprise, it allows you to simulate attacks. So we could have an instantiation of Caldera, we could have several scenarios that existed on there. We can create a fictional organization, we can have emails, so we can, and then we can sustain all this stuff and we can grow it and we can get more sophisticated. And that's one of the things, so I'll be reaching out to my leaders saying, hey, you got some Caldera experts. I don't want to become a Caldera, I can have two, I don't have the time. Right, so that's where we can bring people and teams in. We get some money net set up. There's all kinds of things. That's one of the challenges with, like, for example, there's all kinds of, I can show you guys some really cool stuff like you guys have. But I can't show it. I can't show you today. Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get fired. Okay, so if we had this virtual environment where these things could exist.
So obviously on past, what we could improve it would be to improve this process of using it. What that to be improved. Still on the what done right list. So we have done these events private only, you had to be in the room. We have done these events virtual only. There was no physical, and we have now done 2 of them that were combo events that were hybrid and in the room. Pluses and minuses. I would like this format versus the other one, or you prefer we're all in the room, or you prefer we're all hybrid?
Just a quick comment, it really depends on the host. The success of a combined physical and virtual really depends on who's hosting it, the technologies. We get a plug for Paraton and the team here. I think that you made this all work. If you try to do this in some places that you have technical issues and connections, and that, you know, so it really comes down to where it's hosted.
Well, we'll have to say one of the previous hosts was AT&T, which was the first actual hybrid one before that one. Yes.
We have a comment online.
Okay.
Comment is, she said, I'm glad this was hybrid. I could not have participated otherwise.
Thank you, Jane, and Jane has been instrumental in this being a success. So it is really good that she was able to participate. What could we do better? So obviously approve Pat's approval, so we can sort of have our infrastructure in place all the time, as opposed to this, hey, we panic, get all the stuff set up. I still didn't get my thing finished and connected to the infrastructure in time because I was too busy organizing talks. Whereas if it was there all the time, it actually still would have been working since the last one. We're not going to just on the upgrade. So that's clearly one thing. Other things people would like to see improved.
Yeah. So I feel like this event has set the stage for an increased level of collaboration going forward. And I can see how in a year's time, we would be able to perhaps have a 3rd day of interoperability testing and having group sessions of bringing together all these different capabilities. And yeah, that's what I'd like to see next time.
Thank you. Others, we weren't that perfect.
I agree that extending it maybe to a 3rd day, and to have one of the days, it was great to have that setup session in the beginning. That was terrific. Half a day to do the technical, wherever the new format's at. 2 days of presentations and discussions like we've had here, but a 3rd day to actually have some hands-on keyboards workshops. So the intent of the day is to get those that are wishing to say, hey, how can I get my software playing with your software via these standards or via the mechanisms where we're actually not pair programming, but group programming, or pair programming if that's the desire. So I can see that as that would be my preference, is to have that third day to actually get hands and fingers on keyboards.
So let me hitchhike that on a potential improvement, or maybe we did well, I'm not sure. So this particular one was a Wednesday afternoon prep, followed by Thursday, Friday of the talk. There are not as many people in the room or online as there were at the beginning. Days of the week preference. Some of these we've actually done bracketing, including weekend days. Some would start on Monday, some we do in the middle of the week. Some people like the end days because they tend to have less meetings. Some people like the middle of the week because it's, wants to call them Friday. What's a day that we're in the loop? All this is presuming we actually do this again. So if I should start with, was this worthwhile enough? Do you think we should do it again? So show of hands, thumbs up or thumbs down. Seems to be general agreement we should do it again. We talked a little bit about length. Length sounds like long. We've done half days, full days. This was the first 2 days, and everyone's saying, yeah, even that's not enough. We probably should make it a little longer. So that's good to know. When to do it again? When we started this, our plan was to do 2 a year. I think in the whole time period, there was 1 year we actually did do 2 in 1 year. I'm not positive. We also had 2 years go by without doing any of that. COVID affected that too. Is this an annual event? So we don't want to do it weekly. What do people think?
So a suggestion that I might make would be to have the CASP sub-projects, so the sub-projects, right? So have the event twice a year. And at each event, before we leave, let's form some collaborations. Maybe vendor A and vendor B decide, hey, let's work on a sub-project and be prepared for the next event. So that we could, so again, I'm a developer. I want my hands on keyboards. I want to be working on stuff. But to get some collaborations going prior to the event, between, instead of having individual vendors, individual groups presenting, well, let's maybe have some sub-projects.
So I agree with that 100%. That's been the feedback. Every single one of these we've ever done, every single one of these ever done, we swore that's what we're going to do starting the day after the event, and it has not worked yet. So whatever we can do to actually get that to happen. This one had more prep than any of the others because we put the stake in the ground of, first of all, we got Paraton to be a host and pick a date and a time with enough advance. That's usually the issue is finding a host. That they put the stake in the ground, that then people said, oh no, I actually originally thought it was going to be March, so you made it start a little bit earlier. We moved it out a month to actually, hey, you guys started getting ready, we just started doing stuff. Does prompt another question. The other thing we have done somewhat unconsciously is there's been a sort of theme for each one. The theme of a lot of the earlier ones was comply to connect, sort of evolved into an SBOM and software transparency theme. And this one was the first, thanks to Charlie's efforts, the first that we sort of evolved into a threat intelligence theme. Now, again, there have been, OpenC2 Plugfest of their own, there's been CTI sort of, there's been, each of these groups have their own little ones of the focus, but this was, I think, the first one where we tried to do the threat intelligence across the whole spectrum. We're probably going to want to do more of that, but it prompts the question of feedback from previous ones was, yeah, the techies are great with all the ones and zeros, but why would I want to ever do any of this? And that's why we sort of came up with the value proposition thing with the wishy-washy for the last one, and I'll pick the shorter for this one. The people think that's worthwhile, not worthwhile, care, thoughts on, and again, we don't need the answer today, but probably people want to think thoughts on what the next focus should be. We'd like them to build, so we sort of always want to keep compliant, to connect in there. We always want to keep wishy-washy, we always want to keep them destroyer there. We want sort of what do we want to do next to get people's attention and do something new and further expand our stuff.
John Kavanaugh. So maybe we could think about, if if you see the trajectory of vulnerabilities, you come up with a use case and a operational baseline as a challenge, right? And maybe you have team A and team B, and maybe they use the same, they use different methods. But I think we have to not only understand the standards, but we have to also show we can do it and we can measure it. And I'd like to ask, anybody that's in government, you're the ones that have a mandate. The commercial people, it's suggested that you do it, and certainly you sell to the government, you like it, does it anyway. But we have such a trajectory now. This was a fantastic session for me. I learned so much, and really smart people. But I still don't walk away with I know we're getting it done. Because we're not advertising we're getting it done. And maybe we can do something like that to tell the world there's smart people. Here's milestones. Here's what we can do. Incidents per second, or whatever measurement needs to be.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, obviously the government's not in marketing, it's not something they do that well enough as the system folks on six, because they have way more of a success than they, I'd say declare your success and you start listing 3 of the problems there. It's just not how. And I use it almost every talk I ever give. Some of Charlie's slides from 7, 8 years ago. That was a while ago.
11.
Oh wow. 11 years ago on because that's what gets people attention. You reduce it by 2 orders of magnitude. That saves you huge amounts of money. We have to do more of that. Again, we'll get into the breakouts shortly if anyone wants to do that. But anything else we could do better, we could improve, we should care about the times. Obviously, obviously CAST will keep meeting and we'll figure this out in those meetings. But any other feedback? Well, we still got everybody here. And anything on the interweb?
I'll say we'll get.
Oh, wait, we got one more from Patrick.
So as Duncan said, AT&T did host this at our facility in Washington. I think that even with this crowd size, I think it could work logistically. So, I can't commit to it happening, but I can commit to trying to make it happen. So like maybe in 6 months. But my question is, okay, there's that, but like Washington, DC versus, geography for folks, is this a good sort of spot, or would you rather just look for West Coast, or I don't know, Geneva, Island?
There's a certain confirmation bias in asking the people sitting in a room in Washington whether Washington at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon whether Washington is the best site. But again, thoughts on location. It just came in. From a person in Colorado, we got the DC is a good location. So that's good confirmation.
Bahamas.
Yeah.
Maybe Bahamas would work. I actually found in my career that even when it made perfect sense, we used to meet with the Japanese a lot, and Hawaii makes really good sense for meeting with the Japanese, and neither side could get it approved, even though it was cheaper for both, because no, you just want to go to Hawaii. No, it's like hours less flying. But yes, if we can pull it off. But again, we need a host. It's not just a matter of I'd like to be there. It's a matter of we need someone to, put a really lot of work into it. First of all, the meetings you gotta have ahead of time, and AT&T put a lot of work to help them. So there's meetings you gotta have the time that you can set up. You need all these corporate permission. You need all these people to sort of help you, because yes, you don't let all these random strangers wander around your building. So there's stuff.
We're gonna get that flushed out for the next one if it happens here again.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're gonna let us wander around the building. Good.
After you've met us, you're still gonna let us walk around.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised. Well, AT&T and Paradigm are even considering doing that after I've done it before. That's a really good sign. So anyway, anything else from anybody before we end with the wrap up? And again, people are here, the facilities are available. The intent of this last time was for people to get together and talk. I know people have been doing it anyway, but this was just sort of so we could have some birds of a feather and whatever. Charlie.
not to decide here, but some food for thought for the next one. I think we should add some more response actions and have more IR and show more of the defense pipeline, because the threat intel is good for protection, but part of what the story we've been saying is how we're going to defend ourselves. Let's start blocking some things, remediating some systems, and kicking some bad guys out.
As the co-chair of the Open C2 Technical Committee, I'm very in favor of doing that. Okay, anything else? With that, I will declare the official village closed, other than it's still obviously facilities are available, people keep talking, and I expect to see you all at CAF's meetings in the future. Thank you.
Good, Doc.